Hello, Stampers. Welcome. Um, I'm Pat Farrellis from Farrellis Stampin' Flair, and today we're going to do some coloring. I love to color. I don't know about you, but the stamp set that I'm featuring this week on my blog and on my Facebook page is perfect for coloring. So I do get asked questions quite frequently about how do you do that? How do I use my blends? How do I do this and so on? So I'm going to do three, not six, three different kinds of coloring. And we'll do one bird in each. So let me just flip my camera down and get started. So this is the card that is on my blog post on Thursday. Thursday, February, what is that date? 5th, I think. Today is the 4th because I do publish these a day early so that I have time to get them on my blog. And we're using Feathered Friends. Actually, I keep calling it Feathered Friends. It's really Feathered Fun. It is in the current mini catalog. It is a stamp set. Was probably one of the very first ones I purchased because somebody demonstrated it at On Stage last year and I fell in love with it. Honestly, I used it, but I haven't used it a lot since. And so I thought it was time to pull it back out. It's winter, and there's something about winter that feels nice for coloring. So today I am going to use the parrots down here, and I have the one that's front facing. This one is kind of, you see the back of the parrot with her head twisted around, but I'm going to use the front one. And I'm going to use this little bird here, and I'm going to use these two little birds. Monday's card, I use this one. So if you want to go see a card made with this cute little pair of lovebirds here, go check out Monday's post. But this is the card, and I decided I'm going to do a little bit of a variation on this because some of these birds I think can be done as different types of birds. And I'm going to give you a hint. What I do is if I don't really know what kind of a bird it is, what colors it should be, I go Google it. And in this case, I had, looked like a little sparrow or something to me, but it had a black head in the stamp. So I just Googled birds with black heads. And the Baltimore Oriole, I'm saying that right, came up. And so on my tutorial that you will see on my blog, this is the picture so this is my inspiration picture. And I'm not going to use that one today, but for the post tomorrow that you will see on my blog, that was my inspiration. And I kind of thought these two little birds could pass as cardinals. I think they're a little bit small for a cardinal, but they got pointy heads. They could be blue jays. And we're going to do a variation of this card. This one was done with designer series paper that I love. It is called Everyday Skies, and I shouldn't tease you with it because after I made the card, I went and looked up and it is discontinued or retired, as we say. So I wanted to do the card today with designer paper that is actually still available. And if I'm really honest, I didn't want to cut all these little leaves again. So I think there's 20 of them there. And there are no dies that go with that stamp set. So we're going to use this. And for my greetings, I am using this Banner Sayings stamp set. I have used this one so much. It comes with a coordinating punch that punches 3 different arrows. So you have a choice of what you want. So that's what we're going to use for today's card. And I don't have the card made. I do have it partially made, but we're going to focus mainly on the coloring. So let's start with the little bird. And here was another one that came up with a black head and black wings, which the stamp the stamp doesn't have black wings, but this one is a goldfinch, American goldfinch, I think it was called. Yep, I wrote that on here. And this is the first one we're going to color today. So I have these pre-stamped, and I fussy cut them out so you don't have to watch me fussy cut. And the colors, we're going to do this first little bird with colored pencils. And these are watercolor pencils. They come in two different assortments, and I'm using both of them, assortment 1 and 2. These are in assortment 1, which is pumpkin pie, black, and crushed curry. And this does not really look like crushed curry, it kind of looks brown, but I've had these for a long time and probably has faded. And I'm going to use some Daffodil Delight to just brighten it up. Now, I can't stand in color, so I'm going to pull my chair over here so I can sit down. I'm going to grab my water painter. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that. I think I'm going to try something different, but let's just go ahead and start coloring this little guy. And I am going to do, his beak is quick and easy, so I'm just going to do the beak first. I'm going to do that with pumpkin pie. And you don't have to be real careful with this. The nice thing about these is you can use them as regular pencils and do nothing more after you color, or you can use water painter, or I'm going to try to use my Stampin', what is this thing called? Winkastella to blend. Probably not necessary on the beak. I will grab my water painter. The reason you would want to use a little bit of water, and then you want to clean it. I probably should have grabbed a piece of paper towel. You do want to clean your water painter, or if you don't have a water painter, you can just use a little artist's brush, and that brush will be just dipped in water to get some water if that's what works better for you. Let me check one thing here on my screen. I am going to do that. I don't know. Hopefully the sound was okay. Sometimes I have a little trouble with my sound. It's usually always operator error. Okay. So let's color the yellow pieces first. And I'm first going to color it with Daffodil Delight. This is a nice bright yellow. And then I'm going to come back and shade it with the crushed curry. But I just kind of looked at that picture. See the picture? To figure out where it should be yellow. And it's everything except the wings and the tail, really, are yellow. Now, I'm not careful in my coloring. I just kind of scribble because you're just laying down color. And that's why I like using the water painter, or we're going to try Winkastella, because that blends it and it gets rid of any pencil marks that you might get. So let's just try the Winkastella. I think I've done this years ago, but not lately. And I do kind of always like my birds to be, yeah, I think it'll work. And again, you want to clean in between for sure. But I also want to do some shading here to just make it have a little bit more depth. So you pick up areas that you think would be shaded, and the best way to figure that out is to look where they put, the artist who made the stamps, where they added the black lines when you stamp. So I'm going to put some crushed curry around where all these black lines, shaded lines, and I'm pressing pretty hard. And the nice thing about water painters is you can blend it with either your paintbrush, or we're going to use this Winkastella. And then you can come back if it's not quite dark enough. You can come back and add more color. And sometimes it even will pick up color better once you've added a little bit of moisture. So I'm going to grab my water painter too. Just the water painter is blending it a little bit more, but you can see, hopefully you can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Now where those crushed curry areas are, it is a little darker. And I want his little belly down here to be a little bit darker just because it would be in shadow, right? So I'm just going to come back, and you can do this as many times as you want. And I can even go back over it with the daffodil to light. Don't be afraid to mix and match your colors to blend to get the shade you want. And I don't want to overthink it. I also just, for your information, I stamped this with black memento. So you do want to be careful because that is a water-based ink, and it can smear your black lines. You could also stamp it with StazOn. Typically, when I use pencils, I don't get it wet enough to worry about it too much. But if you're going to add a lot of water, then I would suggest StazOn. So, all right, so then let's just come back in. This is my black, basic black, and we're just going to lay down some color. I like to leave some white spots. It tends to look a little more natural. And if you look at my inspiration photo, you can see, hopefully you can see, there is a little white here and there in their feathers. So, but again, the harder you press with watercolor pencils, the darker it's going to be. So if you want it dark, just press hard. There's something about coloring to me that is just very relaxing. Not as relaxing doing it on a video as it is just doing it for fun. But, and again, you can kind of, so I have white along here, make sure I'm still in my frame. Hard to see where I'm at in the camera when I'm sitting because I can't see the camera. But if you start at the dark and pull towards the light, that will kind of blend it in. So you don't get sharp lines, which is kind of makes it look a little bit more, I guess, realistic if you don't have a real sharp line of color. And I think I want my upper wings up here to be a little bit blacker. So I'm going to just come back and add some more color up here. And then let's go ahead and blend this with my Wink of Stella now. So I get some sparkles on my wings. Bird's feathers kind of sparkle. Now, again, you don't have to come back with water painter or anything to blend if you don't want to. You can just leave it the way it is. If you do, what I have found when I do that, it seems like it darkens the watercolor pencil just a little bit when you start blending, which sometimes is a good thing, right? So there is my first little bird. We'll just set him aside and let's start the other one. So I'm going to get my stuff out of here. I'm going to clean my Wink of Stella and my water painter because we are going to use this to do some watercoloring. I think I'll save that till last. So when you're using watercolor painters, you can use watercolor pencils. You can use black memento. You could use any color really. You can use a water-based ink is what I'm trying to say. Make sure it's nice and dry. I stamped that yesterday, so it's totally dry. So I didn't really have any issues with the black bleeding. If you do it right away, your black can bleed with memento because it is a water-based ink. But I've never had, because I don't get it wet enough, I usually don't have an issue. If you feel like it's going to bleed, then use StazOn. Now we're going to use Stampin' Blends. And I know many of you love Stampin' Blends. I did make a sample to try this out. This little bird is this one right here, and it is called a titmouse. And he's kind of cute. I think that's what these really are. But you can see that it calls out on Google, this is kind of a silvery gray color. So I decided to use Cloud Cover. That was kind of the closest I had to silvery gray. I thought about smoky slate, but I kind of like Cloud Cover. And then it's got a little bit of what they called, I don't remember what they called it, but it's kind of a rusty color, I think they called it, under his wings. So the closest thing I could come to rusty color is Cajun Craze. So with Stampin' Blends, you definitely want to stamp your image with Memento ink. I used black Memento. I only have black Memento. I do think it Tuxedo Black Memento. I do think it comes in other colors, so I'm sure that would work fine as well. Now I get more questions about how to color with blends than with anything probably. So let's do this. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can come in first with your dark and color what you want deepened, like might be in the shadow, and then come back and do an all over with the lighter color blend and blend it in. Or you can do it the opposite way. I tend to, most times, I will do my lighter shade first and then come back and deepen, and then I go over it with the lighter shade again to blend it. That's just me. So let's go ahead and we're just going to color. This is the light Cloud Cover. So I'm just going to color this solid. Now, remember, these are blends. So the ink will want to blend. In other words, it's going to travel from where you actually apply it. It's going to bleed outward. So don't necessarily get really close to the edges because it might bleed outside the edges, is what I'm trying to say. So on this particular stamped image, the black stamped image is actually quite wide. So if it bleeds a little bit, I probably am not going to have a problem. But on some where you have finer lines, just stay away from the edges a bit. It'll bleed out. And if it doesn't and you have a little tip of white, that's fine too. Now you might see that I tend, especially if I'm doing feathers, but in most cases, I tend to use a very light stroke, and I kind of use like a short flick, I guess you'd call it. Because for me, that tends to, for feathers, if you do get a line, it's kind of normal that feathers would have a line. But when you go to blending, it also tends to seem like it blends better. And this is a small image, so I did all of my Cloud Cover. Now I'm going to come back and I'm just going to give them a little bit. And here you can see I'm trying to really flick, okay? And because I just want a little bit right there above his beak area, and then maybe some down here on the sides to be a little bit darker. And now here, since I'm blending, I tend to do it in smaller sections. And then I will come back and go over this, because if it's a little bit wet, it will blend better. Now, Cloud Cover, there's not a huge difference between light and dark. So always keep a color lifter. Color lifter is your friend. If you feel like it's gotten too dark someplace and you want to lighten it, come back. And again, I just kind of flip. If I were to go like this and make a solid line, you'd see kind of a solid line. And that's not really how things are when they blend, right? So again, that's a flick, kind of a stroke, seems to work well for that. So here I'm going to leave his tips a little bit lighter, I guess, and we'll just darken Under his tail is a little bit in shadow, so I'm going to add a little bit more dark down there. And then we'll add some up here at the upper part of his wings near the black. And now if I don't want to take my light cloud cover and go over it because I want to keep that light, what I can do to kind of, I don't know if you can see a little bit, you can see my line here. Just take this and in the lighter area, start in the light and flick upwards. Just brush lightly upwards. It'll lighten your tips and it will also get rid of that line because it'll allow the dark, it will blend down just a little bit. But in this way, I don't darken the areas that I want to be light. Okay, so here I did it the other way. I came in and colored the whole thing a second time. But if I want to lighten, just come up. This is your friend. If you color outside the lines and you don't like it, maybe you didn't trim it off like here and something bled, put your blend outside of the line where you have your boo-boo and just hold it on that spot and the ink will move away from where you place your color lifter. So in that case, if you had a boo-boo out here and you held your color lifter on that boo-boo, it would bleed towards the image and it would lighten out in that area. So that's how you can fix your boo-boos with Stampin' Blends, because we all color and make a boo-boo, right? Now I need his beak on the image is black. So I'm going to take my black, but I'm going to use the light black and color his beak, just darken that in just a bit. And here I purposely left some light and I'm going to take my color lifter and lighten it a little bit because I don't want it too solid of a black because then it's going to like blend with that patch above his head. Okay, so now let's add the Cajun Craze. This is pretty light on the inspiration photo. It is not dark, and Cajun Craze can get dark. So I'm going to use my light, and I am just going to put a little spot down here, not a lot, of Cajun Craze kind of under his wing. And right up against his wing, I'm going to add just a smidge of dark so it has some shading. And then I'm going to take my color lifter, again, color lifter, your friend, and start in the Cajun Craze and brush outward. We can always go back and add if my color lifter gets it too light, but this will help fade that line under there so that it doesn't look like you've got a line of Cajun Craze, because his feathers certainly don't look like a line of Cajun Craze, right? They're all kind of feathered out. So I think I want a little bit more, maybe just to come out a little bit further. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to add a smidge, maybe down a little bit further. And then come back with my color lifter again. And color that out. And sometimes the blending doesn't happen immediately, but I think you can see it has bled outward, which looks more natural, I think. So there are our titmouse. Okay, so that's how I color with Stampin' Blends. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever works best for you. Those are my tips of how I do it. The best thing to learn how to do this and to make beautifully shaded images like we all want is practice. I can't say that enough with blends. practice, practice. And then my last bird is our little parrot. And I am going to watercolor him. So I stamped him on watercolor paper with StazOn ink. You are going to want to stamp with StazOn. Because watercolor paper has a little bit of texture, I usually use my Stamparatus or our new stamp positioner that is available if you sign up as a demonstrator starting February 3rd. So when was that? This is airing on the 4th. So yesterday, Tuesday, it will be available on Tuesday because I'm pre-recording this prior to that. But let's watercolor. I love to watercolor. It is probably my favorite coloring technique. So what you want to have, I like to use Reinkers. You can squeeze your ink pads, stamp pads. If you can squeeze them, that works too. I don't have that much strength in my hand, and our new ink pads, the current design, they are very hard to squeeze because they're pretty stiff, right? So I got my water painter. I have my ink refills, and I need a little jar of water because you want to have some water handy to clean your brush between colors. So I just take these, and this is pretty small, doesn't require a lot. Make sure I got this all still in the picture here. I'm going to put a drop of Timid Tiger, and that's only for his beak. Doesn't need much. His head I'm going to make with Lemon Lime Twist, nice bright green. This, I do not have an inspiration picture for this. I just thought it looked pretty. But I think parrots come in green. And I've got Fresh Freesia, which is a pinky purple. And again, just add a dot. Don't need a lot. And then for my shading, I'm going to use Gorgeous Grape. So put a little bit of dab of that there. Now, these colors out of the ink refills are pretty intense. So you're going to want to, in your water painter, I filled mine up, you're going to want to water this down. And I recommend that you have a piece of water paper scrap handy so that you can test it as you add water. So maybe start by adding 1 or 2 drops. 2 came out, so we got 2. This is my Timid Tiger, and I'm going to scribble over here. That is a little bright for a beak, I think. So I'm going to add another drop and try again. And what I can do is after I scribble, before I go add more, I can just color, because you can probably, it got lighter, right, as I scribbled, because it's gotten some of the ink out. So I am going to just color this beak all over. Watercoloring, so much fun. And then I'm going to go back and pick up just a little bit more and come back in here and just darken. And you see how I just touched that with the brush? It will flow a little bit because it's water. So the shading that you get can be very, very natural. Now, if it's gotten too light, you can always come back and add some more ink, but I'm going to leave it. I do have a splash out here, because I wouldn't mind if this corner up here, actually. So let me just show you how to do that. So come back and I'll add another dot. Squeeze that with my left hand, I guess so. My left hand is pretty useless. I am not ambidextrous. So this is now full strength, and I'm just going to come back and touch that up here. I will scribble some off. And we'll just tap that up here in the corner to darken his beak. And maybe this top piece and the underneath, which would be shadows, which should be darker. Now you want to clean this brush. So I like to just, that's why I like my little jar of water. I could squeeze this until the water runs clear, which is a great way, and then scribble. That's probably the most assured way to do it, to make sure it's clean. But I also don't want to run out of water. So next, let's go ahead and do his head. And his head I did in lemon lime twist. So again, I'm going to bring my scrap back here, and we're going to put some water in here. And let's see how green that is. Oh, I like that. That's nice. It's bright. It's still plenty green. So we're just going to color the whole thing. And again, if I squeeze too much water and feel like I got it too light, just add some more ink. But you can also shade with this by adding more colors. And you can see, hopefully you can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm trying to make his head a little bit lighter than down here. Just let me come back here. All right, I like that color. That's a pretty green when it's watercolored. All right, now we have to clean our brush again. Don't forget this step, because if you don't get it nice, if you don't get your brush nice and clean, you will muddy up your next color. So I have a little paper towel here. I don't know if you can see that or not. So I can, it's a good way to test it. If it's, when I squeeze water, if it's clear, then I know I've got clean. All right, so now we have fresh freesia. And we'll test it over here. A little darker than I want. So I'm going to add one more drop, stir it up. And I'm going to add one more. Some colors are darker, you need to add more water. Sometimes when you squeeze, more water comes up. All right, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to color the whole thing, because all the rest, my next color is Gorgeous Grape, so which is just a color buddy of fresh freesia. And we don't even have to clean our brush in between, because it's a color buddy. So I'm kind of doing like I would with a Stampin' Blend. I'm just coloring all over with the lighter color, because this is going to be my highlight, right? And it's kind of a pinky purple. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Get down here in the tips of his little tail. Can you see that? Hopefully I'm still in frame. And I don't need to clean, but I do need to water down my Gorgeous Grape, because Gorgeous Grape, I'll put in 2 drops, stir it up, and you're going to see how dark it is. Very dark. So in here on these intense colors, and you can spread it out on your block a little bit more and then just add some water like to one end. That's almost black, looks like, right? So now that is maybe should be a little darker. So now I can go up here because that is darker. All right, that's good. I'm going to use the top part up here, and let's color his. And again, if I got it too dark or too light, I can always go back and add more if I'm not getting the shading that I want. And we're just going to add the darker color just kind of around. Now, if you're afraid you've gotten something too dark, while it is still wet, take a clean paper towel in a clean spot and just dab it. And hopefully you can see it. I can see it here. It will lighten this. If it doesn't lighten it enough, just put some clear water on it and come and dab it with your paper towel. So I kind of just want his his chest area there to be highlighted with the lighter color. I want him pretty purple. And here I maybe got a little much, so I'm going to tab it. And there you go. I'm hoping you can see that it's a little bit lighter after I dab my paper towel. And I'm going to grab a clean piece of paper towel. That one's, I don't want to dab a place where I've got orange or green, and now I've got orange or green on his thing. So I would like this to be a little more blended. So I'm just going to clean out my brush a little bit. You can see if I squeeze, I've still got purple in there, right? Not much, but it's, and if I wet this with water, I'm going to just try to shade it a little bit more, and that did it. And if I tap with a clean paper towel there in the center where I want my highlight, then it will pick that up. So if you got a place you're just not real happy with, just wet it with a relatively clean brush, totally clean if you're switching colors, and then you can lighten it by tabbing and picking up some water. So that's it. That is, I'm going to squeeze this out and maybe just squeeze a little bit of clear on here, and we're going to tap it with our clean paper towel. And there we go. Let me bring that in close. You see it? So that lightened his tummy and the underside of his tail just a little bit down here where maybe the sun's hitting it. But it kept these very dark, fairly dark. I probably wouldn't mind if this wing on this side over here was a little darker. So I can go back. This is a nice thing about watercolor, is you can play. And I think that's why I like it, because I can play. I don't have to be in a hurry. I can just kind of play and get it to the intensity of the color I want. It's very correctable, I guess. If you don't like it the first time, you can go back and just add, blend, play until you get it the way you want it. Oh, I like that better. Okay, a little bit darker on the edges. So now I have my three birds. Let me clean this up. Take my paper towel before I drop something on my inky block. We'll get that out of our way. And we now have our three little birds all done. So let's go ahead and put them on a card. Get this out of the way. I have a card that all I'm going to do is put the birds and a sentiment on it. And so here's my three birds. And I thought I'd put him up here. This is a little bit different. I didn't want to cut all those leaves. So I used designer series paper that is from the Thoughtful Journey DSP, which is still available. It's been around quite a while. Oh, hold on. I got a puddle of water over here. Knowing me, I'll drop something important in there that I don't want in the water. Okay. So this is just a piece of the Thoughtful Journey DSP. And this is some wood grain paper that I had. It's from Country Woods. I think it's still available. I didn't check. And these are my telephone poles, or my power line poles. Now, you can have a couple options here. I tore the top, and I did sponge the edges with pecan pie just to make them look a little more weathered. Before I adhered these to the card front, I made my power, laid down my power lines. And the way I made mine is not the way you need to make yours. I I just took a piece of black cardstock and I put it in my trimmer and I just trimmed a really tiny little strip, almost like a sliver. It's probably no more than a 1/16 of an inch. And then I glued them down. Okay. So that's how I made mine. You could also just as easily take a fine tip black marker and just scribe a couple of lines. Either way works fine. So let's just go ahead and put these on here. Now you want to pay attention to where their feet are. And I'm going to put mine on with dimensionals, of course. You know me, the dimensional-aholic. Oh, and I think I need a skinny one down here in his tail. And I'm kind of going to place them. Make sure you place them so it looks like his feet are on the wire in approximately that spot. And then my little yellow bird here, let's put him up here on the top. I need to make sure I'm inside so I can fit on an envelope. Okay. I don't want to extend beyond because this, I covered the whole front of the card, which is a standard A2 size, 5.5 by 4.25. So I just kind of want to place it, put his feet again on the line. And then these two little guys down here, I thought I'd squeeze them in the middle. That'll work. So I might as well put my dimensionals on here too. We'll put them all on dimensionals. What the heck? Can I get one more in the middle? I always like to have 3 if I have room, because it keeps them from tipping. I think I need to use a little one. I don't want the birds to rock and fall off the line. And typically you're going to see all the same kind of birds on the line, but hey, it's a card. We can make it however we want. It doesn't have to be totally lifelike, right? You probably wouldn't see these 3 birds all sitting together on a line, but on my card they can. I want to leave a little bit of that flower showing down there. And my little titmouse. I wonder if it's titmice when there's 2. I don't know. I should have looked up what's the plural version of a titmouse. Okay, there we go. Cute, right? And we just need a sentiment. I know what I was going to do that I didn't do, but I can still do it, is I found these little textured dots in my stash, and I thought it might be nice if it just looked like the wire had something holding it there. So I thought I'd just put one of these right at the end of each wire. I don't know. I guess I could do one first and then see what it looks like. Again, it's a card. I think it looks good. Never can have too much bling. Well, yeah, you probably can. Power lines, they sometimes have things up there. I don't know what they are. They look like something that gives power to the line. So I made it, like I said, I used my banner sayings and I punched it out. I stamped it with pecan pie, which is basically the color of these. And then it looked a little stark with the white. So I took my mossy meadow and just applied with a sponge dauber some on the edges of the sentiment, because I felt like this pure white sentiment looked a little stark on this picture. So I wanted it to blend in a little bit more down here in this grass area. Now, where do I want it? How about right there? That'll work. So there is my birthday card, birds on a power line. On the inside, I had a piece left over when I cut this 6 by 6 down to the size of my card, 5.5 by 4.25. I had a piece left over, so I just put that in here. Never want to waste good designer paper. And this is also from Banner Sayings. So that is my card. That is my tips for coloring. So let me go back to my laptop over here and bring me back. Okay, all right. That's it. I hope those helped. 3 kinds of coloring: water pencils, Stampin' Blends, and watercoloring on watercolor paper. So just remember to use the right kind of ink when you stamp your pictures, because it will not make you happy if your lines bleed all through your colors, right? And you'll have to stamp again. So I hope that helped. I hope you maybe learned a good tip or two that you didn't think of or didn't know. And have a great day. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, I'd love it if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with your friends. And we will see you next week with something else. I can't even remember what I'm featuring next week yet. I want to say flowers, but I don't know. It's something new from the new mini, I think. So we will see you next week. Until then, God bless and have a great rest of your week.